This is Joe from ArtAlienTV, and today I've got some really interesting things to show you in the latest set of images from the Perseverance rover. And I've made this Gigapan from the latest set. This is Sol 1177, mass cam right, Perseverance. This has been enlarged 40%. River Valley Remains, Gollum, and one or two other weird things. In fact, there's lots of weird stuff in here. Most of it, of course, is natural. This is a riverbed, and you can see the valley here. If I zoom in, this is the bottom of the riverbed here, and we've got a slope at the back which goes right up, but we're seeing the bottom of a slope at the back here. Now, bear in mind that these things are a bit of a distance away from the rover. They're quite a long way off. I would say they're hundreds of meters away from the rover, probably 100 meters or 200, somewhere like that, something like that. So they're not in very sharp focus because they're a long distance off. Whereas the things down here on the ground in the foreground are much sharper and more detailed. So when you zoom into stuff that's a long way off like this, you're never going to get amazing sharp detail. But what you can see in the larger objects at least is the shapes and forms of these objects. And some of them are very strange indeed. I'll show you this one first. Now this is on the left side of the image, and we have this thing which I've called Gollum. And it's super weird, really, really weird. I spotted this straight away as it stands up quite large in the background, and I would say is probably about a foot and a half tall, something like that. It may be 2 feet. It's somewhere between 1 and 2. I'm not sure. Let's look at it with a magnifier. We have this thing here with big googly eyes, a nose here, a mouth here, with what looks like either tubes or worm-like structures coming out of its mouth. Now this is a bit blurry. Okay, now this image has been sharpened, but the problem is when you try and sharpen things that are a long way off, they don't really get sharp. They just get muddier and dirtier looking. So what I did is I took some clips of these things and I put them up here for you and brighten them right up. Okay, now this is the one we just looked at. Now the colour's a bit off on this, but it's nice and bright. This is what the raw image looks like on the left here, top left. The raw images of this area from this rover are all very over bleached and overexposed, and there's like no shadow in them hardly at all, so you can't see anything hardly until you enhance the images, which is why I make these Gigapans for everyone to look at, including myself obviously. And this is what you get when you color correct these images and add, you have to darken them about 60% or more, and then add some blue in to the image, and then it comes to life then, and you can actually see the shapes and forms of these things. You have these worm-like tubes coming out of the mouth, or what seems to be a mouth anyway. There's two. There's one smaller one here and a longer one coming down here, which goes right down onto the ground. Now, is it possible that this is actually a skull and that these things were fossilized as various things were coming off the ground to go into it, or as things were coming out of its mouth onto the ground, it was frozen and then eventually fossilized as we have it here? I don't know. But either way, this is extremely weird, right? And I called it Gollum for obvious reasons. I've got a picture of Gollum up here. Doesn't really look exactly like Gollum, but it's got similar ugly, googly-eyed kind of features. We can only compare these things to things we've seen on Earth, either in real life or in films or whatever. Okay? Which is what I do. You can't compare things to things you haven't seen before. You can only compare these things to what we have seen before, which is why I try and use comparisons that we've all seen, just to give you an idea of what I'm looking at, or what I'm thinking we're looking at anyway. I mean, I may be off on this one, but this is really, really strange. And you can see that what looks like a nose, two eyes, a mouth with worm-like or tubes coming out of it onto the ground. as if this thing was frozen and preserved in the very cold, dry conditions. Okay. Now, there's another one right here. I'll show you the actual clip first. This is the clip. This, I think, is also a skull, but this is super strange, and I don't think it's just a skull. I actually struggled with this a bit because I'm actually seeing symmetry in here. You got two. Let's go back a little bit. I'll show you with the magnifier because if you get too close, it kind of blurs out. You got two eyes here, one there, which are pretty clear. We got a sort of cheekbone coming around here, and where the teeth should be, we have this weird bar kind of like thing going across here and into the ground, as if this is a kind of some kind of apparatus, like breathing apparatus or a helmet. Now it's weird. I mean, I spotted this straight away before the other thing, before the Golem thing on the left there. And when you see it on the Gigapan, it really stands out because it's quite dark, and it's got this kind of black reverse kind of C shape here, where it looks to have been eroded or broken or something. Just here, we got this dark C shape in reverse there, which highlights the facial part here, what looks like a facial part here. And we got this part coming across here. So what I think's happened here is this has been here a very long time, and it's wind eroded, and the wind has possibly carved this shape out, partly at least. Okay, but also when I looked again, when I put the Gigapan up, I noticed this part behind here has little teeth on it. If you look really carefully, let's go back a little bit. Use the magnifier. If you haven't got the hover zoom magnifier, I recommend it. It's free on most browsers. We got little teeth here. 1, 2, 3, 4 little teeth here, and we got this kind of angled part just behind it, which comes down like this. It's very strange. Let's go back a little bit. We're too close. Magnifier. Right. So we got what looks kind of like a helmet or some kind of thing behind it here. This doesn't look like a skull. This has got like a straight edges to it. So is it possible that this is another example of a dead Martian or dead alien wearing a helmet that's damaged, and there's lots of erosion and damage to this thing? Because if you look carefully here, we have this stuff going across. It doesn't look like a normal mouth configuration. I'll zoom in and show you that. Just here. This thing here, it kind of looks like part of a helmet. It comes around the back and then in front. Now, I've shown a lot of these before, where I found skulls or mummified heads, I should say, in helmets with tubes and things coming out of their nose or mouth. I've shown a bunch of them recently, and in the past I've shown quite a few of them over the years. I've shown about 10 of them, I think, so far. And this may be another one of those, which might explain why the skull shape is very angular and has this weird kind of pattern to it here, which looks kind of mechanical, because that may be a helmet rather than actual just a bare bone skull here. Okay, that could explain the technical shapes we're seeing in this part of the skull here, right? That's at least my interpretation of it. I could be wrong. Let me know what you think. There's detail here that says to me this isn't just a skull that's eroded and broken. There's more going on here. It's got mechanical looking parts here. And what I've done is I've put these clips on here, but I've marked a bunch of other things at the back. Now, the problem is with these things further back, it's quite dark in this part of the image, and these things are quite a long way off. But some of them are quite large, so you can still see kind of what they are. There's loads of smaller things which are not really worth bothering with because they're too far away. But some of these larger things, objects, are just rocks, obviously. But some of them have things on them, like this one, which seems to have an ankh kind of cross with it's got like an oval part there and a cross shape here. And there's a hollow rock here. We often see these. This isn't necessarily anything that unusual. This has been hollowed out by the wind, by the looks of it, completely hollow there. But the thing behind it is really odd because there's a thing sticking up with something balancing on it, just there. It's not very big, so you've got to use a magnifier, right? So there's the hollow thing, go directly above it. There's a pointed rock there with a sort of almost triangular one on top. There's like a light thing coming off, like a piece of string or something. Very strange. So there are fine details to be seen in here if you look carefully. These things will look a bit blurred, but what I have done is I've done another clip. I've taken the top part of this gigapan and I've done another gigapan of it here as well. And if you follow this link over here, this one at the top here by the corner, and then click on that, this will take you to an enlarged version of this part of the image. Now, instead of enlarging the whole gigapan, I've just taken the top section, I've made it twice as big, and I've brightened it up quite a lot. So you can see things better. The problem is when you zoom in, these things look a bit funny because they've been over enlarged. And even though I've sharpened it quite a lot, they look a bit odd because when you sharpen things which are a bit out of focus, this is what happens. They tend to get this weird, almost cutout look to them, okay? But you can see some of this stuff quite well in this one because it's larger and you can zoom right in, okay? Let's have a look at some of these things really big. I mean, that's not much bigger, but you can see that Gollum thing there. You can see the worm-like things coming out of his mouth. And there is eye detail. If you look carefully just here, that looks like an eye. You can actually see inner eye detail there as well, like an eyelid, a lower lid. This one's very vague on this side. I've called this the alien. Now, in the actual image here, it's very dark, this side, dark and muddy. But we have this angled rock here, and if you go back a little bit and use the magnifier, there's what seems to be a kind of alien attached to this angled rock. Now, I don't know whether this is a fossil or some kind of part of a statue or monument. I don't know. This to me looks actually more like a fossil. Now it's not very clear. You can just about make out there's a face here and an arm here, and the head is massive. It goes right back and round, like something off the Alien film would do. You're talking proper alien stuff here, right? Now it's not very clear. So what I've done is I took a clip of that and I brightened it right up, and I've got that here, and this is my result. Okay. Now I'll go back a little bit and show you with the magnifier because it's easier for me to point these things out. Now, this is what it looks like raw, over bleached, almost no shadow and a weird yellowy colour, right? But when you colour correct it, this is what you get. If you add the right amount of contrast, we have a face here, a nose, a mouth, and a chin. Got two eyes. The head comes right back. We've got an arm here. And we got something hanging down like a string or chain coming down here. It's a bit hard to focus on if you get too close. You've got to get the distance just right. This thing is in the darker part of the image and it's much further away. So this is quite big. This is probably a couple of feet tall, maybe 3. There's like spine-like details here. There's an arm here. There's a kind of tube-like thing hanging down, or what looks like a chain hanging down, right? Getting a bit closer, just here. You see that there? It's insane. Now focus on that for a minute. Let your eyes adjust. The head is here. There's the face there. 2 eyes, nose, mouth, chin. Arm here. And the body comes down here. And we got kind of rib or spine-like details here. You can see this tube-like thing coming down, which may be a kind of chain, because we want to look like kind of like links here in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So something hanging down there. There's also a kind of things there, which is sort of rectangular just here. Let's go in dark and see if I can add a load more contrast to that, and you might be able to see it better like that. Okay. Now look at it. Okay. Look at this head shape. Look at the arm here. Now the arm really stands out, and you can see those details quite well. An alien. Is this fossilized into this thing, or is it part of some kind of statue, or was this part of a structure? Was this attached to a building, like maybe an important building, and this was like some kind of sculpture? I don't know. We're not really close enough to tell with a lot of these things. When they're that far away, you can only guess one way or the other, and there's no way to prove either. That's the problem. But that is pretty insane, if you ask me. Okay, I mean, look at that. There's some really interesting material down here. It's much brighter down here, closer to the rover. And we got what looks like possibly fossilized organics here from the riverbed. Look at this. What the hell is that? I'll zoom out, show you the magnifier very quickly. I mean, you're going to have fun looking at this gigapan. It's very large. Then there's loads of crazy things, right? And far too many for me to show you in a reasonably short video. What some of this may be is fossilized plant material that was once growing in this riverbed. And possible coral or something. Some of this stuff just doesn't look like normal rock. It's far too complex. And we have a lot of cross sections in some of this stuff as well. You got cross sections here. Really interesting stuff. Does that look like a normal rock to you? May have been some kind of weed that was growing in the water. Who knows? Please share on social media. Check me out on Twitter at ArtAlienTV on Twitter. Check me out on Rumble, ArtAlienTV6 on Rumble, and give me a follow on Rumble if you can. So, thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you soon.